Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Four Mics for Men. We have our normal individuals here. These are the brothers and the father that will be along with this journey. It started with all four of us, and we're going to continue with all four of us. So I'm going to hand it off to my dad to kind of introduce tonight's topic.
Well, this evening we're going to be talking about a very sensitive subject. This one impacts not just the individuals who go through this situation, but the families that are involved. And so it's really a continuation of our discussion that we had previously. And so I'm going to just ask CJ, who has been through this, he has experienced this, and it is the topic of divorce. Divorce and how it impacts you, impacts the individual who is going through it, and the people beyond. So CJ, as you have gone through this situation of divorce, how has it impacted you? Tell us about your experience.
So this will be the first time that I'm really talking about this in this form and really, I guess, revisiting it from start to finish, in that way. And I can say that, I remember when I realized, so knowing that you're getting a divorce and accepting it or realizing it, when you know you're getting a divorce, it's just, okay, you know you're getting a divorce. But when things start happening that progress towards that divorce, that's when it becomes real. That's when, you really start process or hitting these feelings or having these wave of feelings. And I remember in going through that, in the initial piece of it, like it felt like a ton of bricks was just sitting on my chest. Like it felt heavy. I couldn't understand how to process it because no one in our family had been divorced, no one close to us. So divorce was something that was foreign. I had friends who had gone through divorces, but I didn't quite, even when they were going through their divorce, I didn't know how to be there for them in that way because I couldn't identify or relate to anyone close enough to where I would feel that.
So CJ, as you went through this whole divorce, unfortunate divorce, what were some of the signs that you saw that, your marriage was in trouble?
So, when I think back, I think what tends to happen is you start doing things more on your own. There's, whether it's work or whether it's a hobby or, hanging out with friends, it's like there you can sense more of like a little separation or there's space involved. And I can say from a man's perspective, from my perspective, it was like, okay, we need to reconnect, or I didn't necessarily feel that, it may have been that way or that there's that much of a gap in space. But at the same time, these things creep up on you. So it seems, in some of the things that I was reading and some of the friends who have gone through divorces either before or after, I think one of the common themes that we all kind of shared was some of this caught us off guard because we weren't, looking at the entire scope of things. So like the space or, not really seeing eye to eye on different things, or maybe the change in personalities or the change in likes or the change in, it's almost like you're growing apart sometimes and you may not even know it.
And I'm glad you are going in that direction because I have talked with individuals and I have seen where people have been building up certain things. It's like a build up. It's not just something happened and then it just snapped. It's either that one individual may have an interest, develop an interest. It could be at work, in the employment space. It could be just a neighbor, and you have so much conversation personally with the neighbor, and then you start developing some kind of attraction. It could be just some other things that your spouse is doing that you are afraid to really speak to the spouse. Fear prohibits you from speaking to the spouse because you believe that the spouse is not going to take it lightly or nicely.
Walking on eggshells.
Walking on eggshell, And so all these little things, yes, can come into play. So I'm glad you're going in that direction to be able to help somebody out there.
Yeah, and I think, I think you're right there. It's really recognizing some of these things, these space things. For a man wants peace, right? So you look for the least path of resistance to get to the peace. So sometimes, if there's an issue and you're not aware of that issue, in your mind, you could feel like that is peace that you're experiencing.
Yes.
But it's really space because there's an issue going on. And so that's something that I think, I kind of realized over the years, and even in talking with some individuals who have gone through it, is, especially if you have, arguments or disagreements in that path, if your mind is seeking peace, the moment that you get peace or you feel like you're at peace, you tend to go with it because you're like, all right, cool, it's good. But I don't know if it's a willful, denial of the fact that there is space, or if it's really that, man, I just needed some time because of all this stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
Well, I think even though I didn't, even though I haven't been divorced, because of my parents getting divorced when I was younger, I wanted to understand why. And so I picked up on certain things, not till I got older, that I told myself, this was the beginning of them going down that road that you're talking about. Yeah. And when you say that space, I don't know necessarily if it's a space, but I think what it is that we get complacent and we take our relationship for granted. Now, a lot of times women will say, "Oh, you used to do this for me, you used to do that for me, you don't do that no more, whatever." And it's not that we love any less, but sometimes as men, we get busy and we focus, because we're task oriented, we're goal oriented. So we're like, okay, I'm going to need to buy my wife a new car, or I need to buy her house, whatever. So we're working hard, coming in with our head down, go to work, come home, go to work, go home, that type of thing. And what happens is over time, we forgot about staying in love with our spouse. It's not that we love them any less, but we stay focused and we get distracted with the busyness. Some of the statistics that you shared with us on the email the other day that I was looking at was all the jobs that have high divorce rates are usually busy people. Yeah. And are usually people with high income, that type of thing. And so usually high income is attached with usually busy people that don't work, that don't go to work at 8, go to lunch, and then come home at 5. They're usually working 12, 15, 16 hours, whatever. They make a lot of money. And so, for me, and you kind of mentioned it at the end there, is that I think a lot of people get divorced or get surprised at divorce is that they're not paying attention. They're not paying attention. So with my parents, when I was little, I didn't understand, but when I got older, okay. So, but before, I used to sleep in the bed with my parents. I was in the middle. Parents slept, I just got on one side of the bed. Then, for whatever reason, I don't know how it happened, they put me in the middle. And so I didn't think about it, but I'm saying if they're lovey-dovey,
Yeah.
you don't want your child, even though you love your child, you don't want your child in the middle. You want to hug your wife, that type of thing. But that now creates an opportunity for separation, and then you get comfortable. Yeah. Then after that, and we used to always go to church together at the time. So then after that, then because one parent was late, then my other parent would say, "Okay, let's go to church. We're just going to let them, get there whenever they get there." So now they start separate cars.
Yeah.
Okay, so then they're not together Then my parents moved into separate bedrooms. Even the same house, but separate bedrooms. Mm-hmm. So when I sit back when I'm 18, 20, I said, why my parents get divorced? I said, I see the signal.
Yeah.
It was going on all along.
Yeah.
And it was a gradual thing that happened to the point where they didn't know each other 10, 15 years later. And it was like, hey, why are we together?
And sometimes what led to things like that is the unresolved issues. Unresolved issues, because sometimes even as men we tend to feel you have a discussion and you made your point and
that's it,
and she made you think she has made her point, and so you feel okay, you made your point, I made my point, and there is an understanding, and so it's okay, I'm good and I'm gone. But the woman is not like that. She wants to really sometimes get to the bottom of what caused that thing, and not just that, but to know that you really understand her, not just intellectually, but connecting with her emotionally. I understand. I know how you could feel that way when I did this. I wasn't thinking about you, but now I see your point, and connect emotionally. And so the divorce situation, those are some of the unresolved issues and things that build up until.
Right, and that leads me to a little bit what you said earlier, that for the most part, men, we don't like conflict. So we try to resolve things quickly without totally resolving it. And like somebody said this, I think divorce, most of the time, is not a blowout. It's a slow leak.
Yes, correct. That's right.
It was a slow leak, and we ignored the slow leak.
Yes.
That's what happens in your vehicle. You ignore the slow leak. Keep ignoring it. All of a sudden, you have a blowout on the highway.
Yes,
It didn't happen because you didn't take care of the tire. You didn't know. You ignored the tire and the slow leak, and I think that's what it is. Because us as men, we don't want to avoid conflict. The thing is, we have to get better at that, like dealing with conflict, so that we can take care of that slow leak, so that doesn't have a blowout. But often I think we ignore the slow leak. We ignore it. We figure it's better to do that than to have a conflict. So we ignore it, and all of a sudden, we have a blowout. How did it happen? Because like Lester mentioned, things, small things that we noticed, we didn't want to confront it or fully confront it, and then we end up where we end up.
So now that you got to the point where you realize that it appears now that divorce is really in the cards here, what do you do? How do you proceed? How did it really get you to the point of making some kind of decision, and how do you go forward?
So, right before I get to that, I'll say this. Going back to your comment about the slow leak, that's absolutely true, and maturity has a lot to do with that as well. When I look back and I look at where I was from a mindset and maturity standpoint, I was not mature enough to be married. What I thought was, we've made this commitment to be married, so it's just supposed to happen. It's just supposed, nothing can shake the fact that we're married. So it's all about what happens next. Are you going to live with this? Are you going to do that? But not live with it in a sense where you're leaving. The option is there to leave. Like the divorce never even entered my mind as an option or a possibility. So throughout everything, it was that, okay, we're going to work this out, or we're going to figure out some way to work this out. But that was the immaturity within myself where I was not looking at that slow leak. I was just looking at taking the whole thing, really for granted to say, we're just going to find a way to work it out, but not understanding what that even really meant. And so the gravity of what marriage is and what it takes is what I did not realize until looking back and reflecting.
So it's interesting you mentioned the maturity. 'Cause I say this all the time. We have to take more hours to get a driver's license than we need to get married.
Correct. Yes.
And I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me. You're committing to somebody for life.
Yeah.
There should be more education on what marriage truly is.
Correct.
I believe that a men's group like this, we need to talk to the younger men who are contemplating marriage. People who are going through marriage, and look, this is the real deal. It's not the movies. It's not the TV show. It's not the romance novels. This is what marriage really is, and I think that kind of creates that immaturity because you have this idea, whether it's your parents were just the greatest parents and the greatest marriage, or you saw marriages on the outside. Oh man, that's how marriage is supposed to be. But unfortunately, we don't get that real deal conversation. With like, look, man, things look great with me and my wife, but these are the real deal. This is what you need to do, and we need to handle. And I think that's where some of the maturity comes, because often it's just based off of your parents. Sometimes they don't fight in front of you. So you feel, well, marriage is supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
But you don't know, behind the scenes, they've had to
maneuver
and negotiate and do whatever they need to do to make it happen.
That's why.
But you didn't know that.
And that's why I believe in premarital counseling, and I've done a lot of premarital counseling, because there are some things that just like you mentioned, there are some things that couples need to know, and it's not just young couples, even older couples. There are some things that they need to know, and so on. But that's another discussion about premarital counseling.
But one comment on that, and then we'll go to the next thing. But one comment on that is, yes, the premarital counseling is very important, but honesty.
Yes, definitely.
Is very important.
Definitely.
Because you can't answer something based on what you feel like
that's right.
the person wants to hear, or
that's right.
Even to try and cheat the design of the test,
that's
right? To show something that is so great when it's not. Like, you have to be honest with yourself and answer the assessment honestly, or else, you're not doing anything but disservice to yourself.
Yes, and now, and as a counselor, and let me share this. As a counselor, the certain questions in the evaluation, the inventories that we do, even though you did not answer truthfully in one question, because there are a few other questions that are different but tie into that same question, that same concept. If you answer those questions a certain way, we know that there's something wrong. It's just that you're not confessing it. You're not admitting to it. You see what I mean? And then it goes back to what you said, truthfulness, being honest. Because you could counsel someone, all day and weeks and so on. If they do not come clean with you, then you'll continue to counsel, but they are still going to be having problems because they are not honest.
Gotcha. Well, I don't want to get into, because I know we wanted to talk about the divorce part, so I don't want to get hung up on the pre stuff, So I'm not gonna. I'm gonna switch gears back to the subject that we were talking about. And so my question is that, so after you realize we're gonna have divorce, whatever, what were you thinking, or what did you think was going to be the next step, that is gonna happen? What was your next step? What was the thing that you were thinking about?
So, for me, it was panic.
Okay.
Like, I was in a denial that there was a such thing as divorce that would happen. So, yes, I knew that was coming, but I still didn't know what it meant. So I was panicking because I wasn't sure how to feel about it or how to even process that was gonna happen or process what it meant. And so what I ended up doing was I went to pre-divorce counseling. So it's not technically called pre-divorce counseling.
Okay.
But I went and sought a counselor because I couldn't process my own feelings. Like the swing of emotions was all over the place. You know, the swing of my emotions were all over the place. I was, in denial one minute, then I was like feeling depressed in the next minute, then I was angry in the next minute, then I was sad in the next minute because I'm reminiscing over, just the good times that we had or trips or whatever it may be. So there was just this cycle of the stages of grief.